Hello, welcome again to FAIRtax Power Radio. I'm Bob Paxton.
And I'm Bob Scarborough.
And we are the FAIRtax Guys coming to you from our new virtual FAIRtax Power Radio studio. Now, I don't know if we're going to stay here or not, but I figure we'll just try this for 1 week.
Hey, it's a lot of fun to be in the virtual world, you know?
Yeah, well, of course, that means that you can't do your scrolling banner. It disappears into the background of the virtual background. So
we're going to be working on that back at the lab.
If anybody out there has any comments about our studio, whether you like it or don't like it or whatever, it'd be cool to see that. They're just experimenting this time and seeing if we're going to stay here or we'll go back to the way we normally do FAIRtax Power Radio. Well, how you been? That was an interesting conversation with Gaver last week, wasn't it?
Absolutely. And I want to remind folks that are watching or listening to the program today that last week's episode is kind of a how-to. And there's printed material that's available through 4 submissions through the FAIRtax, Jim Bennett's FAIRtax, the market, not the marketplace. What is it? Grassroots Corner. I got my places all mixed up. I'm in the marketplace for some information on how to make sure that we have candidates that are supporting the FAIRtax by signing the FAIRtax pledge. And Gaver has the process figured out. We went over it last week, which was great. And in case you missed it, you need to go to the place that you consume podcast or the YouTube channel for the video and watch that or listen to it, and then go to the Grassroots Corner and get the information that's there. So that you can do a step-by-step and getting people signed up, understanding the FAIRtax.
Yeah, next time we'll make sure the Gaver's inside so we don't have all that wind noise that we're putting up with.
He lives near the airport, I think.
Yeah, so that's just, if you're going to go back and watch that one, just kind of be aware there wasn't a lot we could do about that.
The audio is. And that's why I say go ahead and go to the Grassroots Corner, FAIRtax.org. You can go right there. Jim Bennett opened up the article there for 4 episodes for John Gaver's step-by-step process in getting candidates to understand and then sign the FAIRtax pledge. Understand the FAIRtax, sign the FAIRtax pledge. The follow-up part, I think, is real important, and that is key, I believe, to getting the conversation rolling amongst the candidates for a particular office in your area. It's something that you can definitely take to the FAIRtax Bank and get people moving, get the candidates moving.
Well, you know what we missed last week because we were talking to Gaver.
Yes.
You know that. All right, here we go, Symbol. We have got some real goodies to dig into on Congress.gov today. Again, the way that we do this, we go to Congress.gov, put the words Internal Revenue Code in quotes. So you're searching on that entire string there at the top of the page. Be sure on the left side, you've got just legislation in the current Congress check. And as you do that, as of the day we're recording this, 1,649 hits on that search. That's 49 more than we had last time we checked this thing. And we have got some good. I'm going to start all one, Bob. This one is going to go into the tax proposal Hall of Shame that will go over at the end of the year.
I know.
This one just came out. It's HR 70. Let's see. There it is. It's 7547. HR 7547. It's the Space Tax Act. Space, SPACE Tax Act. And you look at the summary, it says this bill, it says SPACE stands for Securing Protections Against Carbon Emissions Tax Act, or the Space Act. But then it ties into where you think it would. This bill imposes excise taxes on the taxable space transportation of a passenger other than a crew or a government astronaut. So, you know, SpaceX, Elon Musk had
people that go into outer space.
Not long ago, you know, William Shatner went up, and you know, there are now, you can now buy, if you got enough money, you can buy a ride into space. And now this HR 7547 wants to tax that. And you look into the text, there is some actual tax this thing. It says to amend the Internal Revenue Code to impose excise taxes on passenger space travel. And here's what it says. Now, this is proposed to be in there. Section 4,285, passenger tax. It's hereby imposed on the amount paid for taxable space transportation for any non-exempt person, a tax equal to 10% of the amount so paid. So if you paid, $5 million for your ride into space, they're going to add another $500,000 passenger tax. And then on top of that, Section 4,286, there's a separate launch tax, which says if you take one of those little suborbital flights up and back down, that's a $100,000 launch tax. If you go into orbit, that goes up to $2 million in tax that they want to add to your personal space travel ride. Now, if that's not class warfare,
I'm going to have to write a check with all those zeros on it. I think what's going to happen is somebody's going to figure out on this, the passenger space launch deal, they're going to move everything offshore into international waters. And then you take off from, however many miles it is. Is it 3 miles or 5 miles? I think to international waters in most cases. And you have a big platform out there and you just blast off from there. And not anything. I mean, but the taxes are already out of this world anyway. So I guess that's, they're trying to tax getting there too.
But I tell you, that gets in the tax proposal hall of shame, because Bob, what in the world does that actually have to do with funding the government? How many people?
Is there a name associated with that? Is there a representative's name associated with that we can expose?
Yeah, let me look at it. It is Earl Blumenauer of Oregon District 3. And as far as I know, there aren't any space launches in Oregon, but he just wants to get into the deep pockets of, less than a dozen people are going to be subjected to this.
Oh my God.
Because how many people can afford that ride into space?
It'll become an international affair at that point. You won't see any of that. Anytime there's taxes on things, it stifles that activity. So
Representative Blumenauer gets his way. The folks who take these private rides into space are going to pay an exorbitant tax. Let's move on a little bit here. Here's another good one. This is HR 7545, the Kimberly Vaughn Firearm Safe Storage Act. And you open that up, there's actually some text on some of these things that we can get into this time. And this says HR 7545, to make unlawful the sale of any firearm by a licensed manufacturer, licensed importer, or licensed dealer without written notice promoting safe storage and a safe storage device, et cetera, and to amend the Internal Revenue Code to allow for a credit against tax for sales at retail of safe firearm storage devices. Now, I didn't know that the manufacturers of gun safes had such a powerful lobby, but apparently they do.
Yeah, it looks that way. I mean, the question becomes, how safe can you be? We used to keep our guns at the house locked in a closet in the basement, and the ammunition was kept somewhere else. Of course, the pistol at the side of the bed, was ready to go.
And this is a Sheila Jackson Lee from Texas. This is her bill, just wanting to give you a tax credit against tax if you buy a gun safe when you buy a gun, which is no doubt a good idea. But do we really need the tax code to go there?
Right. Yes, and that's the question that everybody should be asking is, why are we using the tax code to launch, no pun intended, for your previous Congress.gov submission? Why do we need the tax code to launch these bills? Why is it important to be there?
Oh, mercy. Let's move on here. HR 7538. Now, this will be interesting. To provide the equivalent of a 6-month federal income tax holiday for certain individuals. This bill reduces the income tax of individual taxpayers for taxable years beginning after December 31st, 2021, starting this year, by the 6-month federal income tax holiday amount. So if you get into the text here, you will see that if you have a joint return and you make $83,550 or less, then you get that 6-month holiday. It goes down, progressively if you exceed that threshold. But how about a 6-month federal income tax holiday. Now, you could have a 6-month holiday for the fair tax just by not buying anything for 6 months.
Right. Right. You can buy a wagon load of stuff and pay 23%, or you can buy 1 or 2 items that you really need and walk out paying even less than that because of the prebate.
This one really caught my eye too. HR 7521, the Helicopter Passenger Protection Act. Now, tell me, pray tell, what this has to do with collecting revenue for the government. The Helicopter Passenger Protection Act, HR 7521, says to amend the Title 49 of the United States Code to require that certain rotorcraft manufactured before April 5th, 2020, comply with requirements relating to fuel system crash resistance and for other purposes. And you get on farther down there, it says we will get a tax credit that shall be allowed to amend the Internal Revenue Code to allow a tax credit against the tax imposed by this chapter equal to 10% of the qualified fuel system improvement cost. So if you have a helicopter that does not meet the crash standards, you can get and it costs you X number of dollars to bring your rotorcraft up to the standards, you can get a tax credit for 10% of what you had to spend to get your helicopter flyable again. Now, how cool is that?
That's cool, man. I'm all for it. Sure. But in the tax code?
Yeah, again, what is this doing in the tax code? That's absolutely crazy. One more
real. It is with my helicopter.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, I got one of those Bell 47s like they used to fly on the Whirlybirds. You know, those things were made in the 50s. But,
yes, sir. Yes,
one more real quick. This is HR 7502, the Babies Over Billionaires Act. Now, how does that sound for
Babies Over Billionaires?
Representative Jamal Bowman of New York, the Babies Over Billionaires Act. What this does, and this is actually, I believe, the same act that Steve Hayes is going to be writing a chairman's report on shortly. This bill imposes a 30% tax on the unrealized gains of publicly traded securities of taxpayers whose net worth exceeds $100 million. And again, the IRS must annually audit taxpayers whose net worth exceeds $100 million in any of the 3 preceding taxable years. So they're going to try to tax the unrealized gains. That means if you have a stock that has gone up in value, but you haven't sold it, and you don't have the gain in your hand, you just got it on paper, they still want to tax you on it. And they want to say, all right, well, let's do that and redirect all that money into findings. Billionaires have disproportionately benefited from financial gains. Wealthiest 400 households paid an average tax rate of 8.2%. And investing revenue from such a tax in children at birth, particularly in the first 1,000 days, would support children's healthy physical development, brain development, social and emotional health. And if you oppose this tax bill, then you're just an ogre who hates children.
Oh, well, yes, of course. And don't we all? Now, my point is, my point being, is it even constitutional to tax something that doesn't exist yet? Because it's basically just on paper. And is there, I mean, I don't know that the Constitution actually gets into that part of finances anyway, but I'm concerned that, the trend into that is going to, if I had, a million shares of a particular stock, Apple, for example, that I bought, back in the very beginning of Apple, and I haven't cashed those out yet. I'm either going to go ahead and cash them before this particular bill passes, or I'm never going to cash them, or at least not until somebody.
If you don't cash them, they're still going to tax. They're going to audit you and tax you on the value that you gained on paper. Now, stock is one thing, but what about if you've held property for 50 years and it's now worth 10 times what you paid for it?
Like a family farm, or your old homestead back in the mountains somewhere. You became a sole owner, or owner with your siblings when your parents, passed. I think there would be plenty of transactions before the actual day that was signed into law and went into effect. I think people would be out of the market. I think the market would, the stock market would probably see an upheaval like nobody's seen in a while.
Well, the whole point of mentioning all of this stuff is that all of this craziness goes away with the fair tax. The fair
That's
tax
right.
repeals the entire Internal Revenue Code.
I go back to publication 17 that we've been over and over a few times,
Yes.
a number of episodes ago, and the minutia of descriptions in how to fill out your various forms, and if you do this, then you need to fill out this form. If you don't do this, then and if it's this, there's just so much confusion there.
If you steal something, you have to report the fair market value of your stolen goods.
That's right. And you drug dealers out there, you're going to need to put all that money that you make, you're going to have to count it,
Yep. Okay.
not just burn it.
So we'll get back into some more of this craziness next week on FAIRtax Power Radio, but time's getting away from us. You sent me a very interesting article earlier in the week from Business Insider. And if I'm not mistaken, we've heard this before. This is the IRS saying Americans could do their taxes for free and in just minutes, like other countries, if we had enough money, and they want some more money. But,
right. And isn't that part of the budget process every year, is to gather as much as you can? And I think I remember somebody telling me a long time ago that when you're, and this could go down to the state level too, you have a budget and it's $10 million as an example. And if you come back a year later and you say, heck, we only spent $8 million, we saved the taxpayers $2 million. And the appropriators, the lawmakers go, oh, really? So now this year you're only going to get $8.2 million. So you have to keep that budget number into the atmosphere in order to maintain your level of comfort and keeping everybody paid and on staff and all the the folks that come along and work in your department. So the Treasury Department says the IRS needs more than your return to run at full capacity. The Treasurer's counselor for tax policy and implementation, according to the Insider, once again laid out some of the challenges facing the underfunded agency. The Treasury's counselor points to the example of other countries to look at what an adequately funded tax administrator would mean for Americans. In many developed countries, tax filing is simple and costless.
Read that next sentence. She cites Atlantic's reporting that the average Estonian spends just 5 minutes doing taxes. I bet you anything that Estonia's tax code is nowhere near as complicated as ours.
I reference publication 17 again. You want to know about confusing? Just print that out and read it. I mean, my goodness, it's just unbelievable. In Sweden, taxpayers just have to reply yes to a text message to confirm their taxes, which means that somebody's telling them how much tax they owe, and they're just taking it at face value. And that's where we're heading. That's where it's heading.
The Swedish, whatever they call their IRS agency, figures your taxes for you, sends you a text message saying you owe us this much money, and you just say yes because it's probably a lot easier to just pay what they tell you that you owe than it is to try to prove otherwise.
That's right. You'll be poor and you'll be happy.
Yeah, but what that mentioned, that's come up before. Steve's chairman's report has mentioned a proposal that they want to get the IRS supercomputers, give them access to everybody's personal information, your bank account number, your credit card, all your all of your financial transactions, and let the IRS supercomputer crunch all those numbers and send you a tax bill. And in less than 5 minutes, you can say okay and send it in.
Right.
What's wrong with that picture?
No. I mean, I have enough trouble with all of our information, and we've talked about this leading up to tax deadline. I have a problem with that amount of information about me and my family being in one place, especially with all that's going on, understanding that the UNIVAC computer system at the Internal Revenue Service still running on DOS 1.0, I guess. is subject to hackers, and we know that this is going on, and we hear parallel news conferences and reports saying that we have nefarious enemies, maybe Russia or China or somebody that's sitting over there with a warehouse full of people that are hacking into computer systems. Don't you know that the Treasury system is one that is a target for information about us?
They won't be able to do that unless they can get these new computers that the IRS wants to do. But I guarantee you, they would certainly hopefully have some enhanced security protocols on them. But I don't think there's any computer anywhere that's 100% hack proof. And you're right. So. If all of my information, if all of my personal information, if all of my financial information, if everything I've ever bought on my credit card, Uncle Sam knows about, if every dime that I get through my bank account and every dime that I send out through my bank account, Uncle Sam knows about, and you couple that with the fact that they are now pushing for a cashless society. I mean, how many times have you heard that? They want to do away with cash entirely, which means that every dime you spend and every dime you get will be traceable. And we're already seeing some of that. A year or two ago, I was amazed to read that the Tampa Bay Rays, the baseball team that's not too far from here, they have now got a cashless system. You cannot go to the concession stand, buy a hot dog and a beer and pay cash with it. You've got to use a card. They were saying that it makes it easier. They can run more customers through the line if the cashiers don't have to make change. So if everybody just, in effect, uses the correct change by using a card, but they're already pushing it. You can't buy a hot dog with cash at the Tampa Bay Rays baseball stadium.
And that's a challenge, I think, for that's the whole different discussion too. For even another program is the privacy issues, the control that the government would have in a society that runs off of a card. That could also be a challenge for a political end run that puts you in a position where your $100,000 in your bank could be whittled away by negative interest, for example, or they at least would say, okay, well, we're going to let you buy this, but you can't buy this product, or you can't do this with your money, or you can't, you could end up at a place, well, I'm going to go to Sweden. Well, and you go to buy your ticket and it comes back and no, you can't do that because certain other things have come into play where we don't think you need to be, and a lot of people say, oh, that's a conspiracy theory. And, we're really just thinking a little bit too far ahead on that. And our program, the FAIRtax Guys, we're advocating for super privacy in transactions. From a disconnect with the income tax, it gives you a certain amount of freedom. It gives you a much better way of paying taxes. When you decide that you're going to buy something, that's when you pay a tax. So it encourages savings, which is, I think, the biggest plus for me is it encourages you to save and not spend.
Isn't the marketing here really slick and slippery? They say, well, right now you're spending hours filling out tax returns. If you let us do what we want, you could say do your taxes in 5 minutes. And they sell this as a good idea without mentioning that, oh, well, all this comes with Uncle Sam knowing everything about everything you do. And
and I think that's
it. Computer, it can be hacked and used against you.
And it goes back to publication 17. I don't know why I'm harping on publication 17 today, other than
we had so much fun going through that a few months ago.
And it shows the sheer insanity in a condensed form. It's like a Reader's Digest version of the tax code, because it shows you the superficial levels at which you have to interact with the tax code and the different forms that are there. And then you go at the end of the process, like now that we're past the 18th of April, so we can kind of breathe easy. And we look at that and we go, did we just go through that? I mean, and now I've got to fill the shoebox up for 2022, start working on that. I'm already 3 months into that, and almost fourth, at the end of the fourth month of collecting all that. Can you imagine the days that you would have where you just sit back and say, man, what a lovely day it is. And you don't have to worry about, quarterly payments, the payments in advance that you have to make, estimates and that kind of thing. In some cases, it becomes a challenge when you sit there and you look at the Treasury Department saying they don't have enough money to operate, that their budgets basically diminished over about 20% over the last 10 years. The IRS commissioner says that they have as few employees as they did in the 1970s, which actually, if they dwindled to nothing, that wouldn't be a bad idea either. But unfortunately, we know that's not going to be the case. What a political mumbo jumbo mess this whole thing is. And this gets back to the things that we talk about, like, for instance, last week when we talked to John Gaver, we get people into office that think like the fair tax is the best thing since sliced bread. It gives us a certain amount of privacy, complete privacy. It adds more people to the roles of responsibility when it comes to collecting tax through the consumption tax. And it gives us an opportunity to live our life without having to worry about Section 2, Paragraph 4 of Publication 17 and Form 2087-4, and all those things that most people's, their head is just, we're geared for things other than that, and we can certainly do better. And the fair tax is the best way to do that. The IRS has become a tool of politicians on both sides of the aisle, and it's not what it's supposed to. It's not what it used to be. And I was reading something. I've got to find. I'll see if I can find it while I'm talking to you about this. There was a picture that I had of something that made me think. It was the history of the tax, and the first one was the income tax was put into place and then removed at the Civil War. And then there was another one that came out a few years later, and it was deemed unconstitutional by the Supreme Court. I think it was 1894 or something like that. And so there's precedent. And I'm wondering if there's an attorney out there that might be listening that would say, hey, you know what? We need to go and sue the Internal Revenue Service for being unconstitutional. And I promised that we wouldn't bash the IRS much anymore, but seems like a good time to do that. Is just about.
I don't know. The whole idea is that we, the American people, have a choice. Do we want the income tax and the IRS and all of the problems that come with it? Or do we want a simple, anonymous, nobody knows anything about your personal business kind of tax that you pay at the cash register when you buy things? And that's the fair tax. And I think once people understand that we do have a choice, and that there is a stark difference and just a huge improvement in the tax system, that getting rid of the income tax and going to the fair tax would be. And that's just about all the time we got. I still kind of like our new studio here, don't you? But
yeah, I do too. That's rather nice. Look back here at the world map.
All right. Well, that's going to wrap up this edition of FAIRtax Power Radio. Thanks so much for watching and listening. I'm Bob Paxton.
And I'm Bob Scarborough.
The FAIRtax Guys reminding you that the fair tax is the only truly fair tax, and once you understand it,
you'll demand it.
So, how much will I bring home?
Go ahead.
How much do you make? What'd you say, 40,000? Okay, keep it simple, throw out the deductions, all that stuff. So, you got your 40K, right? Now the first 8,000 is going to be taxed at 10%. The 8 to 33,000 is going to be taxed at 15%. And the 33 to 40, of course, is 25%. So that brings your total to $6,345.
Okay, so the average is what?
16%. Okay, and then on top of that, you got Medicare, which is 1.5%, and then of course your Social Security, which is 6.2%. So actually, your new total is $9,405.
Which is
23.65%. You're getting it. You're getting it. Don't even get me started on what the boss has to pay. He's got to pay a portion of your taxes as well, so you don't have to.
Right. And you?